Our first speaker is Nina Kelly. She is a mythologist with an emphasis in depth psychology. She's a storyteller, author, humanitarian, and cultural and arts activist. She's been involved with several of our films. She also is an archetypal pattern analyst and dream pattern analyst. Nina continues to challenge people through the inspiration and motivation of storytelling. She continues to believe that the art form of storytelling and story sharing originate from the heart of everyone searching for expression, thus healing both listener and teller. I'm very pleased to introduce my good friend, Miss Nina Kelly.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you very much. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. And I tell you, after listening to Tim and Nick this morning, that was quite something. But I'd like to take a different twist now and talk about how important in your life, as far as everyone measures their success differently, and they have their own goal of what success means to them. And I would like to encourage you that some of the gifts of success would come from knowing your heritage, because there's that long line of ancestry that's in your life that you carry with you all the time. And then also, not only knowing your heritage, it's knowing the music, knowing the food, knowing the stories, knowing all the rituals. You bring that with you for the rest of your life. The other thing that I think is really important is know the community from which you came from, because you also carry that. I'm from South Louisiana. We love to eat, we love music, and we love community. And so it doesn't matter whether you leave home, where you go, you always carry those traditions with you. And I'd like to give you some stories, because like Nick said, I like stories. I'd like to tell you stories of 3 individuals who measured their success differently, but yet they were very successful in their career. And they all came from knowing where they came from. And the first was a lady, which we just lost last year. I think everyone has heard her name. She's the Queen of Soul, and that's Aretha Franklin. Aretha Franklin, and in New Orleans we cried and grieved, I tell you, for over a week about Aretha. But Aretha Franklin, her father was a minister. And so she grew up hearing the stories about segregation and Jim Crow. And she, in her heart and soul, she was an activist. But she had the power of her voice. She started singing when she was 13 years old. She taught herself the piano. And she was an incredible voice for social justice. And as you think about her song in the movie The Blues Brothers, when it said, you have to think what you're doing to me, think, and that's Aretha. But her voice was so powerful, and the rest of her life, she spent her whole life with passion, singing songs that really meant a difference, and that she also gave back to humanity. At the end of her life, she's quoted with saying, "I did it, and I always thought about where I came from, who were my people, and how we could make a difference." I would say that she's one of those that you would certainly admire and think about tremendous success in her life. Another person, so she had the passion of her music. And another person who sat in silence for many, many years, long before he started performing, and he started performing at the age of 13 as well. And his family came from Odessa. And his father, he'd sit down and listen to his father for years and years, telling stories about also social injustice and people. And he surrounded himself with literary people. And this person, as we know, won the Nobel Prize recently, and that's Bob Dylan. But Bob Dylan started performing and started thinking, I can make a difference. I can make a difference with my words. I can make a difference with my people, and saying the passion that's in my heart. So the two, when you think about passion and you think about silence, and how silence, if you sit in silence, how the wisdom comes from that silence, and then you can give back to your community. And then circling back around from my place, my New Orleans, Louisiana, we had this ambassador, which he was known as the ambassador of music, but I would like to challenge and say he really was the ambassador for humanity, and that's Louis Armstrong. And Louis Armstrong was also a self-taught musician. And Louis Armstrong knew that he could change the world through his music. And one of the most beautiful stories that I ever heard about Louis Armstrong was the fact that the number one song ever sold to this day is "What a Wonderful World." And Louis Armstrong took the lyrics and he said, "Can't stand the lyrics, love the words. It's what represents what I want in life." And he knew, so there was quite this argument going on, and when he said, "Just let me do my rendition of it." And when you think about, his imagination of how he could take that song and he changed the world. He changed the world because he believed in the gift of humanity. And he believed that if he could take that song, and it put him on the map for the rest of his life. He was on the map before, but this really changed. So much so that many, many other artists have sung that song because he really believed in the goodness and the love of humanity. He's also quoted at the end of his life saying, "I loved people when I was young, and I still love people." So I think if you look at, when you're marking yourself, and I certainly have tried to do that in my life, what matters to me? What matters to you? How can you make a difference? Because you wouldn't be here if you didn't want to make a difference. And I certainly think about the passion you have in your heart. Think about the silence and the wisdom that comes from the silence when you're given that opportunity just to reflect. And then use your imagination. And the imagination, great things happen. You know, quoting Jack Canfield again today, Jack says, "What do you want in your life? What do you want?" So sit with that and think. And every little bit matters. Every little bit counts. When I think about my heritage, and I think about, obviously, redhead, Kelly, you know I have Celtic blood, and I never really thought about it until later on. We're storytellers. I mean, our whole culture is telling stories, and we're hoping to make a difference through that. And then when I think about my community of South Louisiana, we never meet a stranger. You know, we have music that's in just the very cellular parts of ourselves. We even celebrate death. You know, we have something we call jazz funeral. You can't even die without having a party, you know. Now, but when I listen to the stories today of Tim, and I think about these horrific stories, you have to have a balance. You have to find the balance of there's the good and the bad. But there is a balance in life, and I feel a very strong responsibility that if we can find the balance to bring whatever our dream is to the forefront, we're doing something, we're making a difference. And I thank you so very much for having me here, and I wish you all very well. Thank you.